Eric Clapton didn't come apart in a loud way. He became hard, cold, distant, and inflexible. The warmth that used to surround him steadily faded away, leaving only remoteness and sullen hostility. This did not look like a gentle blues purist or a spiritual guitar teacher. It was the picture of a man who had hurt people and never looked back. Eric Clapton is known as one of the most important rock guitarists of all time. But behind the respect is a trail of anger, broken friendships, and moral cracks that many rockers never forgot. That dichotomy, where admiration and silent resentment meet, would be the main theme of every chapter that came after. Eric Clapton wanted people to be real, yet he didn't show much kindness. Others created brotherhoods, but Clapton swept through bands like a silent judgment. He went away, cut people off, and changed the stories, which often left those behind him confused, hurt, or eliminated. He was principled to some. Some people thought he was heartless. This is not a compliment to Eric Clapton's skills. It looks at why so many rock stars stopped like him. And the people who helped him start his career were the first to notice that disconnect. Eric Clapton didn't leave the yards in peace. He told them to go away. It wasn't just the choice that made his exit so shocking. It was the way it was spoken. Clapton didn't say that his leaving was because of a difference of opinion or a time of change. He said that everyone else had done something wrong. Clapton left the band because he didn't like how they were moving toward commercial success. He did this with confidence, making himself the only protector of artistic purity. In doing so, he didn't see his bandmates as collaborators who had chosen a different route. Instead, he saw them as sellouts who had compromised something precious. The harm was worse than just disappointment for those who were left behind. Nato Clapton didn't merely leave a hole. He gave a decision. His leaving meant judgment, not explanation, condemnation, not conversation. This wasn't collaboration falling apart under stress. It was an example of authority being used. And for a lot of rockers who were paying close attention, it brought up a scary question that would follow Clapton for years. What did loyalty mean to Eric Clapton if he could so simply throw away the individuals who helped him establish his career while saying he was better than them? That question stayed with him in his next band and made working together into a fight. There was never a cooperation with Cream. It was a pressure cooker. It may be that, the nice, but it was truly about the death of my son that I had to find a way. I couldn't help but sing. First of all, I didn't want it to be public. Tension formed the band's invisible backbone as soon as Eric Clapton and Jack Bruce had to work closely together. There was no denying the musical affinity between them, but there was also no denying the anger that fueled it. Every practice felt electric. There was always a sense of conflict in each session. Jack Bruce was aggressive, outspoken, and emotionally unstable. He pushed ideas forward without stopping, asking for participation, reaction, and conversation. Eric Clapton reacted in a different way. He shut down when he withdrew. He held back. He wouldn't face Bruce directly. That imbalance made something very scary happen. Clapton's stillness turned into a weapon. It refused to find a solution. It kept disagreement from getting out. Bruce's mood swings filled the void, getting louder, sharper, and more frantic as communication broke down. The friction on stage turned into brilliance. The band sounded fierce, dangerous, and full of life. People heard new ideas. There was something else going on in the band. Resentment was hardening. People were losing trust. People's relationships were getting worse because of implicit hatred. The music stopped working, but Cream didn't fall apart. It ended because it was too hard to live with that strain. A psychological stalemate with no way out and no way to fix things. When that pressure finally broke, it didn't bring serenity. It kept the fight going. Eric Clapton and Ginger Baker never got over their bad feelings for one another. It became harder. There was always tension in their relationship from the start. Baker was unpredictable, combative, and overtly hostile. Instead of compromising, Clapton pulled out. A frigid silence that made Baker further angrier. There was much tension throughout rehearsals. Every show seemed like a standoff that was about to blow up. The lack of release made the situation so scary. There were no fights that cleared the air or debates that ended in understanding. Unspoken hostility hung in the air, contaminating everything around it. Clapton would not get involved. Baker would not give in. There was a lot of anger between them that kept them from talking to each other. There were no apologies, no efforts to fix things, just patience. Every night, on every tour, players were stuck in a band that was held together by success and progressively fell apart because they hated each other. It didn't feel like an end when Cream eventually fell apart. It felt like freedom. What was left behind wasn't closure or reconciliation, there was only scars and the issue of how long that anger had been allowed to fester. And the harm didn't just affect the band. It quickly became something much more personal. The break that shook the music world wasn't real. It was about me. George Harrison was more than just a co-worker. He was a buddy, a confidant, and someone who had no problem letting Eric Clapton into his home, his group, and his trust. Clapton paid back that trust with a passion. He was obsessed with Pattie Boyd, Harrison's wife, and it made everyone around him very uncomfortable. Letters, songs, and confessions came next, and the lines between them blurred. What started as a desire turned into a chase. The damage was done for good when the relationship ultimately crossed the line. Not only did it break up a marriage, it also blew up a friendship that had always seemed impenetrable. The woman went to Clapton. He lost people's faith. And for a lot of rock fans who weren't there, this event changed everything. People no longer thought of Clapton as a sad romantic or a tortured soul looking for love. People thought he would break loyalties, overlook the repercussions, and burn personal ties if it meant getting what he wanted emotionally. The uncomfortable question stayed in the air long after things had calmed down. What did that say about everyone else in Eric Clapton's life that he could do this to someone as close to him as George Harrison? After that, he couldn't get away from instability no matter where he attempted to start over. Clapton didn't merely quit bands. He left them behind. After Cream broke up, Blind Faith was supposed to be a supergroup, a statement, and a new beginning. Instead, it turned into a pressure chamber. Expectations rose. There was more scrutiny, and Clapton pulled out nearly right away. He didn't want to be in the spotlight, didn't want to commit, and didn't give any comfort to those who were attempting to keep the project together. The band didn't break up because they weren't good enough. It fell apart because of a lack of emotion. Derek, the dominoes went in a darker direction. Addiction got stronger. Obsession made it hard to think clearly. Recording sessions became chaotic, driven by anguish instead of purpose. As Clapton got more and more lost in his own thoughts, his bandmates watched. Getting harder to reach and more unpredictable. They had to deal with pandemonium that they didn't make. Plans that fell through, promises that weren't kept, and an emotional burden that wasn't theirs. When the damage got too bad to stop, Clapton did what he usually did. He went back. No explanations, no accounting, just space. Again. By that time, the trend was too obvious to ignore, and his friends were already noticing it. Over the years, appreciation turned into discomfort, then something quieter, heavier, and far more disturbing. Clapton's public pronouncements became more harsh, his opinions became more fixed and unyielding, and he spoke them without hesitation or care for how profoundly they hurt. Other musicians observed as the man who used to be known for his emotional depth showed little interest in conversation, nuance, or self-reflection. Any attempts to confront him were useless. The talks terminated before they had started. People didn't interact with criticism, they withdrew. A pattern slowly started to show up. Rockers kept talking to Eric Clapton because they agreed with him. They stopped because they thought it would be fruitless and possibly harmful to confront him. Being quiet becomes a way to protect oneself. Invitations went away. The distance expanded. People who used to stand next to him chose to back away because they didn't want to get into a fight with a man who never moved, never explained, and never softened. Many people were upset not only by what Clapton said, but also by what he didn't do after that. No accounting, no rethinking, and no establishing bridges. The question stayed in the rock community's minds. How can someone who is so profoundly linked to expressing their feelings become so hard to reach? And why did so many people think it was safer to leave than to say anything? The distance didn't turn into a scandal. It settled in and kept getting bigger. The quiet eventually called for a different question, one that wasn't about other people but about Clapton himself. Eric Clapton got over his addiction. That story has been told, retold, and made holy. What happened next is still quite uncomfortable. Being sober made things clear, and being clear made things right. But for many people who met him, that reckoning never really happened. People didn't say sorry very often. The explanations were rather short. Pain was recognized selectively, mediated through Clapton's personal story rather than the experiences of his victims. People who wanted to be held accountable instead found distance. There were never any talks. No wounds were reopened. They were not seen. Others were discreetly given the job of understanding. People he injured were supposed to forgive him or go away. This was the hardest part for a lot of rockers. Not the pandemonium of addiction, but the frigid aftermath. The understanding that surviving did not inherently foster empathy and recovering did not ensure restoration. The question kept following him, and it got heavier as time went on. Did Eric Clapton ever really think about the harm he did? That question that he never addressed lingers over all he left behind.